Part 4, Resident Evil 4, released in 2005. Resident Evil 4 is a near-timeless classic, save for some glaring oversights that should have been addressed in this high-definition port. While this port does a great deal to improve the basic walking and aiming mechanics, you are still forced to stand still while shooting, and while I could excuse this issue in the original release, this is the 7th port of Resident Evil 4, and they should have fixed this by now. And don't tell me this would break the game, making Leon's reticle bounce like a pair of titties when he runs, and gently, like testicles riding a gentle ocean wave when he walks, solves any problems that run and gunning could have caused. Leon also cannot strafe, which makes turning tight corners a problem. Often, you'll turn 90 degrees down a hallway and run directly into an enemy that is just as surprised as you are. This is a case of you can see Leon and Leon can see the enemy, but you cannot see what Leon sees, so you are completely fucked. Not being able to strafe also makes laterally dodging incoming projectiles near impossible. While I agree that the inventory system is a nice mechanic, it makes for a nice balance of what you can and cannot hoard over the course of the game. Not being able to switch weapons on the fly slows gameplay to a crawl and destroys the tension. The directional pad is perfect for this function, but is utilized as a pointless alternative for the thumbstick controls instead. The knife system is also needlessly convoluted. You have to stand perfectly still, then swipe a circular arc that can make judging distances odd and lead to near misses. Newer games in the franchise activate a knife swipe with a single button press and even allow you to knife while running, which goes a long way to making the knife viable against regular enemies. QuickTime events in any game bother me. Now I don't mind the occasional contextual button prompt to cold cock a hot cunt in the face, but having to mash the X button to outrun gigantic rocks is giving me carpal tunnel, and they could have affected the same sense of panic by forcing Leon to navigate a narrow area filled with enemies and bear traps while escaping the rolling rocks instead. Visually, Resident Evil 4 was and still is a well-designed game. Enemies and locations are both memorable and distinct, but calling this port high definition is completely dishonest. Environmental textures is still a muddy Nintendo 64 quality mess, and there's practically no lighting engine. Some people will play Resident Evil 4 for the first time and discredit it for feeling generic and outdated. While I won't call these people dummies, I will call these stupid dummies ignorant sluts. Resident Evil 4 only feels generic because it is the source of a million imitators, and serves well as an example in the difference between being good for innovating and simply copying previous innovations. Resident Evil 4's over-the-shoulder camera and vulnerable AI partner mean that not only was your ability to aim and take out enemies improved over Resident Evil 3, but you also had a vulnerable partner that needed you to be skilled to avoid her being killed. Resident Evil 5 refined that innovation by adding smart AI partners that could shoot proficiently, bring you items, heal you or themselves, or die if neglected. It's a nice step up from having to babysit Ashley, who, like most babies I deal with, often winds up in a dumpster. And for what it worked well enough. 4 has to be viewed not only by the current standard, but at the standard of its original release. This was the Seinfeld of video games. There was nothing else like it at launch, and now everyone else has stolen their ideas to the point that the uninitiated and unwashed masses may see the material as being played out. What most modern games should have stolen from Resident Evil 4, however, was the spirit of invention. 4 does a great job of changing your location, the characters you interact with, the types of enemies you face, the gameplay style, and the weapons you have available constantly so that it never gets old. You'll go from kneecapping peasants in a village to assaulting a fortified base, to ducking Emperor Palpatine's understudies in a castle, sprinting from invisible bugs in a sewer, hiding from mutants in a grotto, to so many other locations that they have to be played to be appreciated. Bosses include my 10-year-old Uncle Georgie, a QuickTime event, Rambo's dad, one of my sperms, Yakov's pants fallen off, an H.R. Geiger alien, Hillary Clinton's genitals, and I have no idea. The main 4 weapon types provide a near-perfect balance. Precision pistol shots can knock down regular enemies and set them up for melee attacks. Shotgun blasts can knock over crowds of anything smaller than a gigante. The TMP is swift and kills most anything with a quick burst to the belly. The rifle is a long-range monster and close-range liability. And the Magnum absolutely destroys everything, but is hard to find ammo for outside of capacity upgrades. Other weapon types include the I'm a little bitch, so I'll spend 30,000 pesetas to instantly kill this boss rocket launcher, the mine launcher that I respect myself too much to use, the knife which does almost no damage to regular enemies but makes certain bosses a complete joke, and this ray gun that you get for beating professional mode that one hit kills everything and completely destroys the challenge of the game. However, ammo is so plentiful and you spend so much time kicking everyone's ass that unless you just plain suck at the game, you'll rarely feel overwhelmed. Although to be fair, this new port does add larger waves of enemies in certain areas, and my having played this game 10 times might have little something to do with my perception of ease. The writing is campy fun, which is both good and bad.
Well, I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics too.
For an action game, the quippy humor is good fun and makes the breaks in the gameplay tolerable, but for a horror game, it serves only to break the tension. It also doesn't help that the writers contradict themselves often. The cult wants to infect Ashley with plagas, then send her home to infect the President of America. Well, at the start of the game, she is already infected. They should have just sent her back home to America with Leon. The writing also sidesteps plot developments that could have helped with the horror element. After watching this scene, it's hard not to think that Salazar was supposed to be a child, but was rewritten as an adult midget at the last second. An undead child, twisted and manipulated by a cult, would have been notably tragic and could have led to a nice angle of Salazar being childishly cruel. Instead, he just comes off as a complete dickhead with no motivation for his actions, aside from the fact that he, being a manlet, is naturally predisposed to impotent rage. Late in the game, a cutscene highly implies that some gonados are about to blow gonad loads deep inside of Ashley's No Man Cove. Instead of freaking out, Leon just quips to himself and continues to mosey at a casual pace. And when you find Ashley later, not only does she mention nothing about taking piping hot prostate polywogs in her poopa, she doesn't say anything. And not in the I'm sexually traumatized, sign me up for a Tumblr account kind of way, but in the just get back to playing the game you dumb fuck manner. Overall, my biggest gripe with the writing is the amount of lore and character development relegated to optional notes that you can pick up or ignore. While I appreciate the devs not forcing me to watch a bunch of cutscenes to find out that Lewis was a scientist researching the plagas, it could have been implied within the boundaries of the gameplay. Simply stumbling across his desk while in the laboratory would have been enough. It also hurts my brain when the big bad mastermind leaves behind a series of notes that is literally titled Our Plan for Leon to find. Also, Leon, for being a hardcore ass-kicking motherfucker, is inexplicably devoid of a penis. Not only does he rock a haircut left over from David Bowie's stint as a lesbian, he turns down primetime teenage twat due to a case of one-itis that he has for a woman he met 10 years ago and spent less than a total of 20 minutes interacting with. Look, I get it. Ada's ass is fat, and she looks like she could suck the foreskin back out of a circumcised dick. But she's also a manipulative bitch, and would just as easily devein your cock with a clam knife if given the chance. And while some of you might go so far as to say that Ashley has disgusting Dumbo ears, I say fuck that noise. Literally, I would wrap those gigantic lobes around my chode and blow a load inside her globe, thereby giving her a permanent set of hearing aids. Other play modes include Separate Ways, which feels like they scrapped a Claire-style B scenario for Ada Wong, and for the first half of this mode you'll wonder why they even included it. Separate Ways muddies the already campy plot by having chickens shit out important keys, making Ada fight enemies that Leon was already supposed to have killed, and run meaningless errands that don't pan out. The second half plays out in new areas that you'll immediately understand why they were cut from the main game. Overall, this mode is good for one playthrough, but with the lack of a new game plus or higher difficulties, it's hard to recommend playing twice. Assignment Ada slaps Ada into a few more recycled areas, and while it provides a nice quick challenge, its only real addition to the formula is the fact that the further you advance, the more your inventory fills with junk items, and you'll have to toss out some goodies to make room. Mercenaries mode takes place in an enclosed arena with expandable time limits, unlimited enemies. It makes me wonder why these games don't feature more areas with infinite spawns, where you actually have to act quickly and never feel safe. Merc mode is generally the best part of the last several Resident Evil games, and Resident Evil 4 is no exception. While the level count is slim, the challenge and vastly different playing styles of each character makes for a surprisingly large amount of replayability. Leon had the least specialized loadout, and as a result, he has no real strengths or flaws. Wesker is a face-punching, grenade-tossing dynamo. Hunk carries a machine gun only, and makes short work of regular enemies, but struggles against the special spawns. Krauser rapes the butthole out of everything with his Rambo bow, and Ada increases the innate difficulty by forcing you to play with half of an erection. Overall, Resident Evil 4 HD could have learned some tricks from its younger siblings, and the upscaled textures disappoint, but the gameplay is still solid, and the characters and scenario are still fun. And to anybody who hasn't played it by now, you should either do so immediately or stop pretending to be somebody who plays video games.